The first blow to my door came at 6:14 in the morning, and it didn't sound like knuckles. It sounded like a fist trying to break bone. "Deja! Deja Carter, open this door right now!" I shot up off my couch. I'd fallen asleep there again, laptop still glowing on my chest, and my heart slammed so hard I tasted copper. Through the peephole I counted heads. My mother, Renee, my brother, Xavier, my aunt Pam, my grandmother, Ruth, gripping her cane like a weapon, and behind them, pacing my porch like a man on the edge of a cliff, my father, Marcus Carter. Before we continue, please hit that like button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story reaches. Now let's continue. 6 people, 6 a.m. screaming, "Open up! We know you got the money." Xavier's voice cracked with fury I hadn't heard since we were kids fighting over the last plate of food. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours in 3 days. My badge for St. Agnes medical billing sat on the counter, my scrubs still folded from the dryer. I was 29 years old. I had $61,000 in a savings account I'd built dollar by exhausting dollar since I was 19, and somehow, overnight, my own family had turned into a mob outside my front door. I pressed my palm flat against the wood, feeling it shake with every pound. "Go home," I said, voice hoarse. "I'm not opening this door." "You disrespectful little," my mother started, and then I heard my father's voice crack through the chaos, small and desperate in a way that used to gut me. "Baby girl, please." "They're gonna break my legs." I closed my eyes. 3 days ago, none of this existed. 3 days ago, I still believed my father was just a man who liked the casino a little too much. I had no idea that number, $45,000, was about to detonate every relationship I had. I had no idea my own blood had already decided my money wasn't really mine. 3 days earlier, my phone rang at 11:47 p.m., an unknown Biloxi number. I almost let it go to voicemail. "Is this Deja Renee Carter, daughter of Marcus Carter?" The voice was flat, professional, terrifying in its calm. He introduced himself as Dwayne Reeves, said he handled accounts for a private lending operation connected to a card room off Highway 90. He said my father owed $45,000, accumulated over 4 months of markers he couldn't cover. "Why are you calling me?" I asked, sitting up straight in bed, my whole body suddenly awake. "Your father listed you as his emergency contact and financial guarantor," Reeves said. "We just want to resolve this like adults." 30 days, Miss Carter, or this becomes a different kind of conversation." I hung up and called my father immediately. He didn't answer. I called my mother. She answered on the first ring, like she'd been waiting. "Mama, did Daddy really lose $45,000 gambling?" The silence on the other end told me everything before she even opened her mouth. "Deja, baby, don't panic. We're going to figure this out as a family." "As a family," I repeated, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. "Mama, I didn't gamble a single dollar of that money." "He's your father," she said, like that was an argument, like blood was a debt schedule I'd signed without reading the fine print. "You're the one with the savings. You're the responsible one. That's what family does." I sat in the dark of my apartment in Baton Rouge, my degree from Southern University on the wall, my 6 years of double shifts and skipped vacations sitting in that account, like a monument to everything I'd sacrificed, and I understood, for the first time, that my family didn't see my money as mine. They saw it as theirs, just sitting in my name, waiting for the right emergency to unlock it. I didn't know yet that this was only the first crack in the dam. I agreed to one conversation, just one. My cousin Malik Washington, a paralegal I trusted more than any of my actual siblings, told me, "Go hear them out, but record it. Don't let them corner you into a decision on the spot." We met at my grandmother's house on Cypress Street, the same kitchen table where I'd done homework as a kid. the same yellow curtains my grandmother Ruth had sewn in 1994. It should have felt safe. It felt like a courtroom, where I was the only one who hadn't been told the verdict was already decided. My father sat at the head of the table, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him, 61 years old, shoulders curled in, eyes red-rimmed. For a second, my heart broke clean in half. "Deja," he said, "I know I messed up. I know. But these aren't people you negotiate with. These are dangerous men." "Then go to the police," I said. "You know I can't do that," he said quickly. Too quickly, and something in his tone snagged in my brain like a splinter. My mother jumped in before I could ask why. "We already talked about it. You have the money. You take it out. You pay these men. Daddy pays you back over time." "Over what time?" I asked. "He's been retired for 2 years. He doesn't have income." Xavier, my younger brother, slammed his palm on the table. "So what? You're just gonna let them hurt him? You'd rather keep your little savings account than save your own father?" "That account took me 6 years to build," I said, my voice shaking now. "I skipped my own vacation for 3 years straight. I drove a car with 190,000 miles on it so I could save that money. And now it's time to use it for something that matters," Aunt Pam said coldly, arms crossed, "instead of just sitting there for you." I looked around that table. 5 faces I loved. 5 faces looking at me like an ATM instead of a daughter, a sister, a niece. And I said the only thing I could say. "I need time to think." The look my mother gave me in that moment was one I will never forget. It wasn't worry. It wasn't fear for my father. It was calculation. I left that meeting and drove straight to my apartment, hands trembling on the steering wheel. Something about my father's reaction, the way he'd flinched at the word police, kept replaying in my mind like a skipped record. I called Malik. "Something's off," I told him. "My daddy won't go to the police, won't even consider it." Malik, ever the paralegal, ever the calm voice, said, "Deja, when someone owes an illegal debt and refuses every legal option to resolve it, sometimes it's because the legal option would expose something worse than the debt itself." I didn't sleep that night. At 2 a.m., I pulled up my own credit report, something I hadn't checked in almost a year because my score had always been near perfect, 781 the last time I looked. It had dropped to 612. There were 2 credit cards I had never opened. A Carter Home Improvements LLC business loan for $18,000 I had never signed for, and an auto loan for a truck I had never owned, showing 3 missed payments. My hands went ice cold. Someone had used my identity, and it wasn't a stranger. It was someone who had my social security number memorized because they'd filled out my financial aid forms when I was 17 years old. It was my mother. I sat there at my kitchen table at 2:30 in the morning, staring at a truck loan with my name on it that I had never seen, feeling the ground shift underneath everything I thought I knew about my family. The $45,000 casino debt wasn't the crisis. It was the distraction. The next morning, I called the number on the auto loan statement. A woman named Carol at Delta Gulf Auto Finance in Gulfport confirmed the loan was opened 8 months earlier, in person, at a dealership 40 minutes from my mother's house. The buyer's signature matched a name I knew like my own heartbeat, except it wasn't mine. "Ma'am, the co-signer's ID on file lists a Renee Carter," Carol said. "Your mother, I'm assuming?" I sat frozen, phone pressed so hard against my ear it hurt. That afternoon, I drove to my mother's house without calling first. She opened the door already defensive, arms crossed, like she'd been expecting this exact conversation for months and had rehearsed her lines. "You took out a truck loan in my name," I said. No greeting, no softness left in me. Her face didn't even flinch. Xavier needed a vehicle for his new job. "You had good credit. It was temporary, Deja. We were going to tell you." "When?" My voice cracked wide open. When were you going to tell me you stole my identity? Don't say it like that, she snapped. Your family. What's yours is ours. And there it was. The sentence that detonated everything. What's mine is ours, I repeated slowly. But what's Daddy's gambling debt that's suddenly all mine to fix alone? She had no answer. For the first time in 29 years, my mother, the woman who always had a comeback, stood in her doorway in complete silence. I looked past her into the living room and saw a brand new 65-inch television mounted on the wall, a television that hadn't been there 3 weeks earlier, a television that cost roughly $1,200, money that had to come from somewhere, while I was being told my family was drowning. That's when I understood. This wasn't a crisis. This was a pattern, and I had just become the newest chapter in a long, long book. I went straight from my mother's house to Xavier's apartment complex off Airline Highway, still shaking, still furious, needing to hear it from him directly. He answered the door in the same defensive posture our mother had, arms crossed, jaw tight, like the whole family had rehearsed the same script in some group chat I wasn't part of. You knew, I said. You knew Mama put a truck in my name. It was supposed to be short-term, he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. I was going to refinance it once my credit built back up. Your credit's bad because you defaulted on the last 3 things Mama put in someone else's name, isn't it? Silence. That silence told me more than any confession could have. How long has this been going on, Xavier? He finally looked up, and for a second, I saw something almost like shame flicker across his face. The little brother I used to walk to school, the boy I'd covered for when he broke Grandma's china, the boy I genuinely loved despite everything. Since I was 22, he said quietly. Mama's used your name for a credit card, a personal loan, and now the truck. She said you'd never notice, because your credit was so good, it could absorb a few dings. A few dings, I repeated, feeling something in my chest turn to stone. Xavier, my score dropped 169 points. I've been denied for a mortgage pre-approval I applied for 6 weeks ago. I thought it was because of a clerical error. It was because my own mother has been running a shadow credit operation using my identity for 7 years. He didn't apologize. He just said, "It's not that deep, Deja. We're family." That phrase, "we're family," had been used on me like a leash my entire life, tightening every time I tried to pull away, every time I tried to protect what was mine. In that apartment, under fluorescent light, watching my brother shrug off 7 years of fraud like it was a forgotten chore, something in me finally, permanently, snapped free. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was done being anyone's safety net. I want to be clear about something. I didn't go scorched earth immediately. I am, by nature, a reasonable woman. I gave my family 48 hours and one final, calm conversation before anything else happened. I called a family meeting of my own this time, on my terms, at a public restaurant on Government Street, where I knew no one would raise their voice past a whisper. Here's what I'm willing to do, I told them, laying a folder on the table. Inside were printouts, the fraudulent accounts, the credit report, dated documentation Malik had helped me compile. I will personally go with Daddy to file a police report against the loan sharks. I will help him find a legitimate consolidation loan he can pay back himself, over time, with his own retirement income. That's it. That's what I'm offering. That's not enough, my mother said flatly. The debt is due in 26 days. He doesn't have time for consolidation. Then that's a consequence of decisions that were made without me, I said, keeping my voice level even as my hands shook under the table. I also need everyone at this table to know that I've spoken to a lawyer about the fraudulent accounts opened in my name. I'm not filing charges yet, but I need it to stop, immediately, and I need every account closed within 7 days. My grandmother Ruth, who had said almost nothing through this entire ordeal, finally spoke, her voice trembling with age and something that sounded like grief. "Renee, is this true?" "You used your daughter's name?" My mother's silence answered for her. "Then you fix it," Grandma Ruth said, "before you ask that child for one more dollar." For a moment, one brief, fragile moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, reason had won. I was wrong, because that night, my father did something that changed everything. At 9:40 p.m., that same night, I got an alert on my banking app, a login attempt from an unrecognized device in Gulfport, Mississippi, then another, then a third, followed by a temporary lock on my account after someone entered my password incorrectly 4 times. My hands went numb. I called the bank's fraud line immediately, sitting in my car in a Walgreens parking lot, watching the clock tick past 10. "Ma'am, someone attempted to link an external account and initiate a transfer request of $45,000 from your savings," the representative said. "It was flagged and blocked by our system. Would you like to file a fraud report?" I already knew, with sick, gutting certainty, exactly who it was. "I called my father," he answered, breathless, guilty before he even said a word. "Baby girl, I panicked," he said. "Reeves called again, said they'd hurt me if I didn't have it by Friday. I still had your old bank password from when I helped you open that account when you were 19. I wasn't gonna take it without asking. I swear, I needed to see if it would even work. You tried to steal $45,000 from me," I said, each word landing like a stone dropped from a great height. "After everything, after Mama's fraud, after I sat at that table and offered to help you the right way. I'm your father," he said, like that phrase alone had ever once been enough. And that was my breaking point, the moment every ounce of guilt I'd been carrying evaporated, and something clean and hard took its place. "You were my father," I said quietly, "when you taught me to change a tire and drove me to my nursing school interview and sat in the hospital when I had my appendix out. Tonight, you tried to rob me. Those are not the same man, and I am done pretending they are." I hung up, and I changed every password I owned that night, hands shaking, jaw set, heart somewhere between shattered and forged into something new. The next morning, they showed up screaming at my door. Which brings us back to 6:14 a.m., my whole family pounding on my door, screaming loud enough that Mrs. Fontenot in 4B stuck her head out into the hallway. I didn't open it. Instead, I did something I should have done 3 days earlier. I called the Baton Rouge police non-emergency line and calmly explained that my family was outside my apartment, that an attempted unauthorized bank transfer had occurred the night before, and that I felt unsafe. 2 officers arrived within 11 minutes. I watched through the peephole as my mother's face shifted from fury to panicked performance the moment the patrol car pulled up. "Ma'am," one officer said to her, "you need to step back from the door." "This is a family matter," my mother insisted. "Attempted bank fraud isn't a family matter, ma'am. It's a crime," the officer replied. I finally opened the door, not to let them in, but to stand in the frame, on my own threshold, and say what I needed to say to all of them at once. "I love every one of you," I said, and my voice barely wavered, "but I am not paying Daddy's debt. I am not forgiving Mama for 7 years of identity theft, and Xavier, I am not forgetting that you knew and said nothing. You're choosing money over family," my mother spat. "No," I said. "I'm choosing myself for the first time in 29 years. There's a difference, and it took me way too long to learn it." My grandmother Ruth stepped forward then, past my mother, past my father, and took both my hands in hers, her eyes wet. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered. "I should have said something years ago. I watched them do this to you, and I stayed quiet." That, more than anything, cracked something open in my chest. Not my resolve, but my grief. Because even in victory, even standing my ground, I was losing something. I was losing the family I thought I had, to finally protect the woman I was becoming. It's been 8 months since that morning. My father did eventually go to the police about the loan sharks. Reeves and 2 associates were arrested in a broader investigation into an unlicensed lending ring operating out of 3 parishes, something I learned had been building a case for over a year before I ever got involved. My father is on a restitution plan now, paying it back slowly through his pension, without a single dollar of mine attached to it. I filed a police report and an FTC identity theft complaint against my mother. I didn't press for her to go to jail. I couldn't do that to my grandmother. But I got every fraudulent account closed, disputed, and removed from my credit report. It took 4 months and 41 hours of phone calls, but my score is back to 774 today. My mother and I don't speak. Xavier reached out once, 3 months ago, a single text that said, "I'm sorry, I should have told you. I haven't answered yet. Maybe I will someday. Maybe I won't. I've learned that's allowed." My grandmother Ruth and I talk every Sunday now, longer conversations than we ever had before, like we're rebuilding something that got buried under 30 years of other people's chaos. I bought a house in April, a small 3-bedroom off Perkins Road, paid for with the very savings account my family tried to claim wasn't really mine. I sat on my new porch the day I got the keys, and I cried. Not from grief this time, but from something that felt, for the first time in my life, like ownership of my money, my choices, my future. People ask me if I regret how it ended, if I wish I'd just paid the $45,000 and kept the peace. I tell them the truth. There was never any peace to keep. There was only a debt I didn't owe, dressed up as love. I don't answer doors that scream at me anymore. I built one that only opens from the inside now. And for the first time in my life, that's exactly how I like it. That's the end of today's story, but maybe it's only the beginning. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and let me know in the comments how you think the story continued. Thanks for being here.